Many of you know, yesterday, just about 24 hours ago, at about 5:30 last night, a group of young people were walking over a bridge in the area of Maritime Veterans Memorial Bridge. They reported that they saw something in the water which appeared to resemble a leg, a human leg. They called for Shirley Police. Shirley Police and fire responded and eventually confirmed that what they had seen in the water was, in fact, a human leg. Last night, state police officers assigned to the Middlesex DA's office, as well as Shirley Police, the Massachusetts State Police Underwater Recovery Unit, continued their investigation out at that pond or waterway. They were able to recover additional body parts from the water. Those parts appeared to have been clean cut. That is, they were severed with a sharp force instrument. We did not recover a full body. The search is continuing for additional body parts, but we were able to make an identification from the body parts that were recovered. We determined those body parts, which appear to all be from the same person, to be the remains of a gentleman named Peter Deegan, age 69. Mr. Deegan was most recently living in a pre-release house in Rockland, Massachusetts. And that was as a result of a case in which Mr. Rockland had pled guilty in Suffolk County. That case related to an arrest in February of 2019. Mr. Deegan was arrested following a search of his home. In that home was found 2 kilos of cocaine and a very substantial amount of cash. He eventually completed the sentence, the part of the sentence that he was serving at MCI Shirley, and he was released to that pre-release house in Rockland, where he was living. The information we have is that Mr. Deegan was last seen alive on this past Friday, February 27th. We are, of course, interested in anyone who might have information about having seen Mr. Deegan since Friday, and we are also interested in any members of the public who might have seen anything that appeared to be suspicious up in that area of the bridge or the pond in the time since last Friday. I'm going to turn it over to Chief Santiago, and when the Chief is finished, we'll take a couple of questions. Chief?
Thank you. Thank you, DA Ryan. Thank you, press, for being here. Like DA mentioned, we received a call last night at approximately 5:30. Both police and fire responded. Once they determined that the originally came in as a suspicious item, it was determined that it was a human leg. They secured the scene. They immediately notified the Middlesex District Attorney's Office, CPAC, and then they in turn notified Crime Scene Unit and the underwater team to recover the rest of the body parts that were discovered there. I would like to tell the public that just to notify us. I know we've received some phone calls today. Just continue. That's what we need. We need the public's help to determine what occurred here today. I know we have a lot of residents that are concerned, and I want to assure them that we're here for you. We're here to support you, to provide, that public safety that we've been providing. So any concerns, they can notify the Shirley Police at 978-425-2642, and see something, say something, report it to us so we can get it. I do have a detective assigned with the state police, so they're collaboratively investigating what occurred here.
Chief, for DA, was it obviously Peter Deegan had done his time and now he was in a release home? What did he have ID on? Is that who made this identification so quick?
We were able to make identification by fingerprints from the body parts. And with respect to the public safety issue, of course, it's still very early in the investigation, less than 24 hours. But at this point, we do not believe this to have been random.
How about cause of death at this point?
We don't know. We don't know.
And you think that the body was transported to Phoenix Pond?
We don't know that either. We don't know. That's why we're interested in anybody who might have seen anything up in that area in the time since Friday.
He was convicted in 2018. How long was his sentence at MCI Shirley?
It appears, and it's a little bit confusing because of COVID, it appears that the original sentence was an 8-year sentence, but the records seem to indicate that at some point he was released on a GPS bracelet. You recall that a number of people were released on bracelets during COVID, and also that at some point, although it was a Suffolk case, he had made his way to Shirley to serve a piece of that sentence.
Do we have any idea how long the body was in the water?
No. No.
This question, please.
But we do know he was last seen on Friday, so
Right.
we're in that time frame. I'm sorry.
This question for Chief Santiago in Spanish, please, por favor. Chief Santiago, ¿cuál es el punto de la investigación en este momento, por favor?
¿Cómo fue la pregunta?
¿Cómo va la investigación en este momento?
Pues todavía estamos en el primero proceso de la investigación. Estamos trabajando con el State Police, con el Middlesex District Attorneys, la oficina de ellos, y yo tengo un oficial que está con el State Police. Es muy temprano para decir lo que estamos haciendo.
Y el mensaje a la comunidad que se estén tranquilos, que estén...
Y que si ven algo, que nos llaman al número que yo dije, el 978-425-2642, y reporten cualquier cosa que ellos vean. Nosotros estamos aquí 24/7 para cualquier cosa que pasa, para mantener las personas aseguradas.
DA Ryan, it appeared that there were state police detectives looking at people's homes nearby the pond. How crucial is doorbell camera footage, any footage? Do you want people to be providing you with Ring cameras?
Yes, as we said, anything would be helpful. I know some of you have been out there. It's a pretty remote area. So anybody who saw people driving in, people walking in that period of time and have footage for that would be useful for us to have. Yeah.
We understand that there was a man who submitted dash cam video of somebody throwing over a black bag into that pond in that same area. Is that something you can...
We're looking at everything right now. We're still very early in going through. Obviously, when you ask people to be helpful, which we are grateful when they are, you get some information that is useful and some that is not. We're in the process of going through that.
Was Deegan in touch with his PO following his release?
Yes, as we are understanding is that he was where he was supposed to be until Friday.
Can you spell his name?
Yes, it is DEGAN.
So he was in a post-release home?
Pre-release, yeah.
In Rockland?
In Rockland.
And when was he set to no longer be there?
We don't know that, and there are often opportunities for people who might be doing well to continue in a place, so I don't know what the termination date was. We do know that he was last returned to that facility just about a month ago, on February 6th of this year.
No idea if he was required to be in that facility.
It's my understanding he was required now to be there, yes.
And the last time he was seen there was Friday.
Friday,
Was
yes.
he reported missing?
At some point, we got that information. I don't know whether the home had actually made a report of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank